Hey, welcome. I'm really glad you're here today. Not just because you pressed play, but because you're someone who's trying. Someone who's showing up for your language journey, even when it's hard, even when it's quiet. So, let me start with something honest, something I haven't said out loud very often. I love my native language, truly. It's the language of my childhood, the voice of my family, the sound of home. But English gave me something different. Not better. Just different. Something I didn't expect. Something deeper than vocabulary or grammar. You see, I used to think English was just a subject. Something you studied for school. Something that belonged to other people. People with better accents, people who traveled, people who lived in big cities or international communities. I thought I would always feel like a guest in English, a visitor, like I was renting the language, not owning it. But little by little, through quiet practice, awkward sentences, long nights of listening and writing, something shifted. One day, I found myself writing about something painful in English, a personal disappointment, something I couldn't even bring myself to say in my native language. But in English, it felt possible. It felt safe. I wrote it. I read it back to myself, and I cried. Not because the sentence was beautiful, but because it was true. And in that moment, I realized something that stayed with me ever since. Sometimes, it's your second language that helps you find your first voice. There's a strange kind of freedom in English, at least for me. Because I didn't grow up with it, it didn't carry all the same expectations, pressure, history. In my native language, I always felt like I had to be right, polite, smart, correct. But in English, I could be real. I could say, I'm confused, without feeling ashamed. I could say, I'm proud of myself, without worrying if it sounded arrogant. I could say, I'm trying my best, and really mean it. So, today's episode isn't just about learning English. It's about what English can give you, if you let it. It's about discovering the parts of yourself that only show up when you stop chasing perfection and start choosing expression. It's about the courage to speak, not just with your mouth, but with your heart. So before we go deeper, let me ask you something. What is English giving you right now? Not just in your vocabulary notebook, not just in your speaking scores. What is it giving your soul? A space to dream bigger? A way to connect with the world? A place to finally be honest about what you feel? Pause for a moment. Let yourself feel that. Because what you're building right now, sentence by sentence, mistake by mistake, isn't just language. It's a new version of you. And in this episode, I want to honor that version. The one who speaks with courage, the one who keeps going, the one who knows, deep down, that this journey is about so much more than English. You know, one of the most surprising gifts English gave me wasn't about sounding fluent. It wasn't about job opportunities or passing exams. It was about freedom, the kind of freedom I didn't even know I needed, until I felt it for the first time. Let me explain. In my native language, I've always felt watched, not literally, but emotionally. There's this pressure to say things the right way, to speak politely, to choose my words carefully, to follow the unspoken rules of tone, respect, formality, tradition. And honestly, it made me cautious. It made me quiet sometimes. It made me hide how I really felt, just to avoid judgment or misunderstanding. But when I started speaking and writing in English, it felt different, lighter, like I could breathe. Because English didn't have history for me. It didn't have childhood shame or cultural expectations attached. It wasn't filled with the voices of relatives teachers or neighbors telling me how I should speak. It was just me, learning, trying, exploring. And in that space, I started saying things I had never said before. Not because I suddenly became brave, but because English gave me emotional distance. And that distance, it gave me safety. I could write in my journal, "I'm angry. I feel like I'm not enough. I'm scared I'll always be behind." I could speak out loud, "I'm proud of myself. I'm tired of pretending. I want more." And I didn't feel embarrassed. I didn't feel judged. Because I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was just finally expressing. That's the power of a second language. It becomes a new container for emotions that don't always fit in your native one. And that container can be messy. It can be imperfect. But it can also be incredibly honest. And sometimes, honesty matters more than grammar. So if you ever feel like you express yourself more easily in English than in your own language, you're not alone. If you've ever felt like writing something painful or personal in English just feels safer, you're not strange. You're healing something. You're giving your emotions a place to land. And that's beautiful. So here's my suggestion. If you've never done this before, start an emotions journal in English. Not for grammar, not for practice, for you. At the end of the day, just write one true sentence. Today, I felt. Right now, I wish I could tell someone. No filters, no judgment, just your voice. In English. Because maybe, just maybe, English can be the place where your feelings finally feel safe. I don't know exactly when it happened. There was no big announcement. No aha moment with fireworks or applause. It was just quiet. I was walking home one evening, lost in thought, thinking about something that had upset me earlier that day. And then I realized my thoughts weren't in my native language. They were in English. Simple sentences, short reflections. Why did that bother me so much? Maybe I expected too much. Next time, I'll take a breath before reacting. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even intentional. But it was real. And in that moment, I realized something kind of wild. My inner voice had changed. Not completely, but enough for me to notice. It got me thinking, what does our inner voice actually sound like? And can it change depending on the language we use? I think, yes, not just in words, but in tone, in emotion, in identity. When I think in my native language, I hear history, family, school, rules, cultural expectations, old fears. It's not bad, but it's heavy, familiar, but full of noise. But when I think in English, especially when I'm alone, something feels clearer. It's like I get to step outside of myself for a moment, like I get to be a little more honest, a little more open, a little more me. In English, I ask myself softer questions. I forgive myself faster. I'm more curious, more reflective, less judgmental. And maybe it's because I didn't grow up with English all around me. So it doesn't carry the same emotional weight. Or maybe English just became a language of possibility, of permission. It gave me permission to dream bigger, to imagine different futures, to write things down I couldn't explain before. In English, I created new parts of myself, the version of me that dares, the version that speaks, the version that says, I don't have to be perfect to be real. I'm allowed to feel this. I'm learning, and that's beautiful. So let me ask you something. What does your inner voice sound like in English? Is it gentle? Curious? Braver than usual? Maybe you haven't noticed it yet. Maybe you're still translating every thought, every word. That's okay. But one day, when your mind is calm and your heart is honest, You'll catch yourself thinking in English, and you'll realize it's not just a second language anymore. It's your second voice. Let's talk about mistakes. The ones that make your cheeks burn. The ones that stay in your head long after the conversation ends. The ones that make you want to give up and say, I'm not good at this. Yeah, I've made plenty of those. Wrong verb tenses. Mispronounced words. Times I said something completely different than what I meant. I remember once I meant to say, I'm excited to meet you. But I said, I'm excited to meet you. The other person laughed. And for a second, I wanted to disappear. But you know what? They weren't laughing at me. They were laughing with me. And then we just kept talking. That moment stayed with me, not because it was perfect, but because it showed me something important. Mistakes don't break communication. Fear does. Here's the truth most learners don't hear enough. Native speakers don't care if you make a mistake. They care if they understand you. And most of the time, they do. Even when your sentence is a little off. Even when your pronunciation isn't exact. Even when you pause for a second to find the right word. Because what matters most is this. You tried. You showed up. You spoke. In my native language, mistakes felt heavier, like a reflection of intelligence, like something shameful. But in English, every mistake felt like a step forward, because I was learning out loud, risking judgment to gain real experience. And that's where growth lives, outside your comfort zone, inside that brave, shaky, imperfect sentence. So I stopped chasing perfect English, and I started focusing on real connection. I practiced more. I spoke more. I laughed more, especially at myself. And little by little I noticed something strange. The more mistakes I made, the less I feared them. And the less I feared them, the fewer I actually made. So, if you're holding your breath every time you speak, if you're afraid of being laughed at, misunderstood, or corrected, let me tell you this. You're going to make mistakes, and you're still going to be understood. You're still going to improve. You're still going to be okay. In fact, you might be better than okay, because you'll be growing. Mistakes aren't the opposite of learning. They are learning. And one day, just like I did, you'll look back at the words you got wrong, and you'll smile. Because those wrong words, they were the right steps. One of the most unexpected gifts English gave me was people. Conversations I never imagined having. Connections I didn't think were possible. Moments that reminded me that language isn't just about words. It's about opening doors. I'll never forget the first time I had a full conversation in English with someone from another country. It wasn't perfect. I was nervous. My voice shook a little. But something amazing happened. They listened. They smiled. They responded. Kindly. Patiently. And suddenly, I wasn't a language learner anymore. I was just me. Speaking. Connecting. Being human. That conversation was only 10 minutes long, but it changed something in me. Because in that moment I realized English isn't just a school subject. It's a bridge between people, cultures, ideas, experiences. A bridge that lets you meet someone you might never meet otherwise. And the more I spoke with others, the more I learned, not just about English, but about the world. I've talked to a mother in Ireland about parenting, a student in Egypt about exams, a traveler in Japan about loneliness, a stranger in a comment section about music that made us both cry. These conversations didn't require perfect grammar. They required curiosity, openness, heart. And every time I connected with someone new, I felt like I was rewriting the rules of who I thought I could be. Before English, my world was small, familiar, comfortable. But English gave me a new passport, not for traveling across countries, but for traveling across perspectives. I learned how other people lived, what they feared, what made them laugh, what they hoped for, and in their stories, I found pieces of my own. So, if you're feeling shy right now, if you're holding back from joining that language group, or sending that message, or asking that question in the comments section, here's your invitation. Say something, even if it's short, even if it's simple, even if it's scary, because behind that sentence could be a friendship, a new idea, a connection that teaches you something no textbook ever could. English isn't just a language you speak, it's a world you enter, a way of reaching across borders without ever leaving your chair. And all it takes is that first sentence. So go ahead, be brave, say hello. You never know who's listening. You know, for a long time, I thought language was just about communication, just words, just grammar, just structure. But English taught me something different, something deeper. It changed how I think, how I imagine, how I dream. Let me explain. In my native language, I had a certain rhythm of thought. It was practical, familiar, focused on survival, on tradition, on what's realistic. But when I started reading, listening, and journaling in English, my thoughts began to stretch. I started to think about things I never gave myself permission to imagine before. What if I started my own blog in English? What if I told my story publicly? What if I built something bigger than I thought I could? These weren't just new ideas. They were new possibilities. And I think part of it was this. English didn't carry the same rules for me. It wasn't tied to who I've always been. It allowed me to rewrite myself. When I listened to English speakers, especially those who spoke with passion, I felt something open inside me. It wasn't just the words, it was the energy, the mindset, the boldness. English became the language I used for vision boards, for goal setting, for planning my future. Even when I was unsure, even when I was scared, I'd still write it down in English. I want to live with purpose. I believe I can grow. I will speak fluently, even if I stumble first. And little by little, those thoughts became my reality. Because thinking in English helped me focus. It gave me distance from the noise. It made my decisions feel simpler, more intentional. It helped me step outside of the version of me that was afraid to dream. And maybe that's the biggest gift. So, if you've never tried this before, I invite you now. Use English to plan your dreams, write your goals, speak your intentions, imagine your future, not just in your head, but in your second language. You'll be surprised how much power it gives you. English can be your classroom, but it can also be your canvas for creativity, clarity, courage. Because it's not just about what you can say, it's about what you can imagine. And once your dreams have a voice in English, they become even more real. Let's talk about something that every English learner feels, but not everyone talks about: the accent. That little voice in your head that says, they'll know I'm not a native. I sound different. What if they laugh? Yeah, I felt it too. For a long time, I believed my accent was a weakness, a giveaway, a reason to stay quiet in group conversations, to speak less, to hide more. I thought if I didn't sound perfect, then maybe my English wasn't good enough. But here's what changed everything. One day, I was watching a video. It was a speaker from Italy, sharing a powerful message in English. Her accent was strong, Her grammar wasn't perfect, but I couldn't stop listening. She was honest, clear, passionate, and by the end of the video, I realized I didn't care about her accent. I cared about her voice, her message, her presence, her truth. That day, something shifted inside me. I started listening differently to people from Brazil, Egypt, Poland, Vietnam, all speaking English with accents that carried their stories, their cultures, their roots, their bravery. And suddenly, my own accent didn't feel like a mistake anymore. It felt like proof. Proof that I was trying, that I was learning, that I was becoming. Now, when I speak English and someone hears my accent, I don't shrink. I don't apologize. Instead, I remind myself, this accent means I learned another language. This accent means I had the courage to speak anyway. This accent means I didn't give up. And honestly, that's powerful. So if you're afraid your accent will make people judge you, here's the truth. Most people don't care. And the ones who do, they're not your people. The right listeners will hear you. The right opportunities will find you. The right conversations will welcome you, accent and all. Because what matters most is your voice, your story, your willingness to speak even when it's scary. So don't hide. Don't wait to sound native, because you're not here to be perfect. You're here to be real. And your accent? It's not something to fix. It's something to carry, with pride. When I first started using English online, I wasn't trying to impress anyone. In fact, I was mostly hiding, using a small account, a quiet username, writing little comments here and there. Nothing too bold. But even then, something about writing in English on the internet felt free. No one knew where I was from. No one judged me for sounding non-native. No one corrected me with a red pen. They just read what I wrote. And sometimes they replied, "Thanks for sharing this. I feel the same way." That was beautiful. And I started to realize I could have a voice in English, even if no one in my real life had ever heard it. So I started writing more. Comments under videos, short posts on quiet platforms, even one or two blog entries, raw, honest, simple. I wasn't trying to go viral. I wasn't trying to sound advanced. I was just expressing myself. And each time I hit send or post, I felt a little less afraid. English became more than just a language I was learning. It became a space where I could grow, a version of me that felt more confident, more creative, more open. And the best part? This version of me didn't need permission, didn't need validation, didn't need to sound like a textbook. She just needed the courage to speak. If you've never done this before, let me encourage you. Start something small. Write one sentence in English on social media this week. Leave a thoughtful comment on a YouTube video or a podcast. Start a private blog, even if no one reads it but you. Create a note on your phone where you write your truths in English. Because when you begin sharing your voice, even quietly, your confidence starts to grow louder. And you begin to realize, this isn't just something I'm learning, this is someone I'm becoming. Online spaces can be scary, sure, but they can also be powerful mirrors, reflecting the strength you didn't know you had. This one is personal, and maybe it's the part of my English journey that surprised me most. Because I didn't just learn how to speak. I didn't just learn how to listen. I learned how to know myself in a completely new way. You see, in my native language, I was used to playing certain roles. The respectful one, the quiet one, the one who always said the right thing at the right time. My culture, my surroundings, my family, they all shaped who I was allowed to be. And I followed that. I became good at saying what I was supposed to say, at hiding the deeper feelings, at staying small, polite, correct. But then came English. At first it was just a tool, a challenge, a subject. But the more I used it, the more I noticed something strange. I was saying things in English that I had never said before, not even to myself. I started writing my real opinions, my dreams, my doubts. I spoke more directly. I asked different questions. I wasn't as scared to disagree, to reflect, to say, "This is who I am." And slowly, English became a mirror. Not a perfect one, but a new one. A mirror that showed me a version of myself I hadn't met before. Bolder, clearer, more emotionally honest. There's something about a second language that removes the old filters. You're not bound by the same expectations. You get to choose your voice. You get to rewrite who you are on your own terms. And that freedom? It's powerful. Because sometimes we don't need a new place to grow. We just need a new language to grow in. So if you've ever noticed that you're braver in English, or more reflective, or more emotional, or more you, that's not a mistake. That's not weird. That's your inner world evolving. That's self-awareness. That's growth. And English? It's not just a skill in that process. It's a key. Take time this week to ask yourself, what have I learned about myself through English? What can I say now that I couldn't before? What does this language allow me to feel, name, or dream? Because learning English isn't just about fluency. It's about becoming someone you're proud of, someone who can speak their truth, out loud, in any language. This is where the story comes full circle. And if you've been with me this far, I want to thank you, truly. Because this chapter isn't just about English. It's about everything it gave me. The things I never expected. The things I didn't even know I needed. English gave me courage, not just to speak out loud, but to speak from the heart. To say, I don't know. To say, I'm proud. To say, I'm still learning, but I won't stop. English gave me space to make mistakes, to start over, to grow beyond the version of myself I used to believe was enough. English gave me a mirror, a new way to look at myself, to question who I was, to imagine who I could be. It didn't just open doors to opportunity, it opened doors inside of me, to confidence, curiosity, and connection. And English gave me connection, to people I would have never met, to ideas I would have never found, to a world far bigger than the one I started in. So no, I didn't grow up with English. I wasn't raised in an English-speaking country. I didn't travel the world or go to international schools. But still, English became part of my identity, my voice, my story, my strength. And if you're still on your journey, if you're in that in-between place where English feels hard, where you're translating too much, where you're not sure you belong, let me tell you something from the heart. You do. You belong here. Your voice matters, even if it's quiet, even if it's shaky, even if it's still growing. You don't have to wait until you sound perfect. You don't have to be a native to be proud. You just have to keep going. Because what English gives you, if you let it, is more than a skill. It's a key to your deeper self, your bigger dreams, your braver life. And that's something worth holding on to. Always. Thank you for listening. Thank you for walking this path with me. And thank you for choosing to believe in your English journey, even when it's hard. I'll see you in the next episode. But until then, keep speaking, keep feeling, keep becoming. Because you're already so much more than just a learner. You're a voice, The world is lucky to hear. Thank you for sharing this time with me. Thank you for listening with your heart. And thank you for being on this journey. Not just to learn English, but to discover yourself through it. If this episode reminded you of your strength, of your progress, of your voice, then I hope you carry that feeling with you. Because no matter where you started, no matter how far you still want to go, you're already becoming the version of you that your dreams have been waiting for. Keep speaking, keep writing, keep trying, even when no one's watching, especially then. You're not just learning a language, you're building a life you're proud to live. I'll see you next time. Until then, stay kind, stay curious, and stay you.